What drives three men to commit an unthinkable act of brutality? How does a rap battle, an art of words, rhythm, and skill, devolve into an unspeakable act of violence? And how does a woman, against all odds, defy death to tell her story? On New Year's Day 2014, a quiet, empty lot in Columbus, Georgia, became the backdrop for a crime so horrifying it left even seasoned investigators questioning the very fabric of humanity. A young woman, her talent shining brightly in the heat of a freestyle rap battle, unknowingly ignited a dangerous blend of ego and rage. Three men, unable to handle their bruised pride, plotted revenge so cruel and calculated it would send shockwaves across the nation. At gunpoint, she was forced to drive to an isolated location. Outnumbered, overpowered, and trapped, she endured unspeakable violence, assaulted, shot 10 times, and left for dead. Her attackers thought they'd silenced her forever. They were wrong. This story isn't just about a heinous crime, it's a mirror reflecting society's darkest truths. How does entitlement breed such monstrous acts? Why do we still fail to protect women from these horrors? And above all, how do we ensure survivors like her are heard, not erased, and that justice is not just sought but delivered? As we unravel this chilling tale, we'll explore the toxic mix of fragile egos and unchecked rage that led to this attack, the extraordinary strength of a survivor who refused to be a victim, and the relentless pursuit of accountability that followed. This isn't an easy story to tell. It's not an easy story to hear. But it's one we must confront if we hope to understand the depths of human resilience and the cost of societal failure. Welcome to our channel, where true crime meets untold stories. To my returning viewers and loyal subscribers, thank you for your support as we continue to uncover the stories that need to be told. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us as we bring daily updates on true crime, both the told and the untold. To understand the full scope of this story, we need to start at the beginning and meet the people at the heart of this harrowing tale. Brielle Saunders was in her element, standing confidently amidst a crowd that had grown accustomed to her brilliance. She wasn't just another participant, she was the star everyone came to see. Her words were sharp, her delivery electric, and her presence magnetic. The audience hung on every syllable, cheering and shouting as she turned phrases into weapons of lyrical art. For Brielle, this was more than just a battle, it was her proving ground, her stage, her home. That night, her verses cut deep, effortlessly dismantling her opponent in front of the roaring crowd. The energy in the room was palpable, but not everyone was celebrating her win. Among the faces in the crowd were Robert Johnson, Katori Glover, and Joey Guerin, three men who watched Brielle's performance with a mix of simmering envy and bruised pride. Brielle's victory wasn't just a defeat for her opponent, it was a public reminder that her talent and confidence could outshine anyone, even in a male-dominated space. For Robert Johnson, the self-proclaimed leader, it was a blow to his ego. He prided himself on control, over situations, over people, and seeing Brielle command the crowd with such ease infuriated him. Katori Glover, ever the enforcer, mirrored Johnson's anger but kept his emotions buried beneath a mask of indifference. Joey Guerin, desperate for approval, looked to Johnson and Glover for cues, his insecurity fueling his desire to prove himself. As the crowd thinned and the party began to wind down, Johnson's anger morphed into something darker, a plan. He couldn't let Brielle's victory go unanswered. To him, her success wasn't just a personal affront. It was a challenge to his authority, his masculinity, and his need to dominate. The three men cornered Brielle as she prepared to leave. What began as tense words quickly escalated into threats. Brielle, never one to back down, stood her ground, her voice steady as she tried to de-escalate the situation. But Johnson wasn't interested in words, he wanted submission, and when he didn't get it, his rage boiled over. At gunpoint, Brielle was forced into her own car, her mind racing as she tried to process what was happening. The men ordered her to drive to an isolated location, a desolate, overgrown lot on the outskirts of the city. The once lively energy of the evening had turned into something cold and menacing. Outnumbered and overpowered, Brielle endured relentless violence. The details of that night are harrowing, too graphic for words, but what stands out most is her will to survive. Even as she was assaulted, shot 10 times, and left for dead, Brielle's mind refused to surrender. The men, convinced they had silenced her forever, fled the scene. But what they didn't anticipate was Brielle's extraordinary resilience. Against all odds, she clung to life, her body battered but her spirit unbroken. She dragged herself to a nearby road, where a passing motorist found her and called for help. In the days that followed, as Brielle lay recovering in a hospital bed, the story began to unfold. Investigators pieced together the events of that night, uncovering not just the crime but the toxic blend of entitlement, anger, and fragile masculinity that had fueled it. Robert Johnson, Katori Glover, and Joey Guerin had underestimated Brielle in the worst way possible. They saw her as a target, not a survivor. But Brielle wasn't just alive, she was determined to fight back, to make sure her voice was heard and justice was served. This story isn't just about a brutal crime, it's a stark reminder of the societal issues that allow such violence to fester. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about power, gender, and the deep-seated entitlement that can drive people to commit unimaginable acts. Brielle Saunders' journey from victim to survivor is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Her story demands attention, not just for the horrors she endured but for the resilience she displayed in the face of it all. Stay with us as we continue to unpack this case, exploring the legal battle that followed, the fight for justice, and the questions we must all ask ourselves about how to prevent such tragedies in the future. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next installment of this harrowing tale. Together, we'll honor Brielle's courage and shine a light on the truths we can no longer ignore. Done, not by a long shot. Though her body was racked with unimaginable pain, Brielle Saunders' will to survive burned brighter than the flames consuming her. With the fire scorching her skin, she forced her body to move, rolling desperately on the cold, hard ground to extinguish the flames. Every movement sent waves of agony through her, but she refused to give up. Her mind raced as she lay there, broken and bleeding. 10 gunshots. A brutal assault. Her attackers thought they'd destroyed her, but Brielle's spirit was far from shattered. She knew she had to keep going, had to fight for herself, for justice, for the life she still had within her. With no one around to help, Brielle summoned strength from somewhere deep within, dragging her battered body across the desolate lot. Her surroundings blurred as pain and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, but she focused on one goal: survival. Somehow, Brielle managed to reach a nearby road. Bloodied, burned, and barely conscious, she collapsed on the asphalt. It was there that a passing motorist spotted her and called for help. The sight of her broken body would haunt them forever, but that call was the first step toward her rescue, and her justice. When first responders arrived, they were stunned by the extent of her injuries. It was a miracle she was alive, let alone able to whisper details about her attackers. Every word she spoke became a thread in the unraveling of a crime so heinous it would shake the nation. As Brielle was rushed to the hospital, the investigation began. Police combed through the abandoned lot, uncovering evidence that painted a horrifying picture of what had transpired. Forensics teams worked tirelessly to collect DNA, fingerprints, and other clues that would link Johnson, Glover, and Guerin to the crime. Meanwhile, Brielle underwent multiple surgeries. Doctors marveled at her resilience, calling her survival nothing short of miraculous. Despite her extensive injuries, she remained determined to help authorities bring her attackers to justice. Her testimony, raw, detailed, and courageous, would become the cornerstone of the case against the 3 men who had tried to destroy her. As investigators delved into the lives of Johnson, Glover, and Guerin, they uncovered a disturbing history of violence and entitlement. Each man had a criminal record littered with red flags, warnings that had gone unheeded until it was too late. Robert Johnson, the ringleader, showed no remorse when he was apprehended. His arrogance persisted, even as evidence mounted against him. Katori Glover, ever the enforcer, tried to play the role of the reluctant participant, but his actions spoke louder than his words. Joey Guerin, the youngest and most insecure of the trio, broke down under pressure, revealing key details that sealed their fates. The trial was a spectacle, drawing national attention as the gruesome details of the crime came to light. Brielle's courage in testifying against her attackers captivated the courtroom. She spoke with a strength that belied her pain, refusing to let the men who had brutalized her take away her voice. The jury took little time to convict Johnson, Glover, and Guerin on multiple charges, including attempted murder, sexual assault, and arson. They were each sentenced to life in prison, their lives forever altered by the choices they made that fateful night. For Brielle, the journey didn't end with their sentencing. She faced years of physical and emotional recovery, but she refused to let the attack define her. Instead, she became an advocate, using her story to raise awareness about violence against women and the systemic failures that allow such crimes to occur. Her voice, once celebrated for its lyrical genius, now carried an even greater weight. Through interviews, public appearances, and community outreach, she turned her pain into purpose, ensuring her story would never be forgotten. Brielle Saunders is more than a survivor, she's a symbol of strength, resilience, and the unbreakable power of the human spirit. Of her trauma, but also her unyielding resolve to seek justice. The courtroom hung on her every word, her voice steady, even as her tears threatened to fall. Brielle refused to let her attackers strip her of her dignity again. She described the moment the guns were drawn, the overwhelming fear, and the calculated cruelty of the men who had turned what began as a night of music into a nightmare. She painted a chilling picture of how they laughed as they degraded her, how they stripped away her humanity piece by piece. But she also spoke of her fight, her refusal to let them take everything from her, even in the face of death. As Brielle recounted the moment she was shot and left for dead, the courtroom was visibly shaken. Her words cut through the air like a blade, forcing everyone in attendance to confront the sheer brutality of what had happened. Yet, despite the horrors she described, Brielle's voice carried strength. A testament to her resilience and her determination to see justice served. The prosecution leaned heavily on Brielle's testimony, pairing it with the forensic evidence that left no room for doubt. DNA samples, ballistics, and medical records all corroborated her account, painting a picture of a premeditated and callous attack. The prosecutor delivered a fiery argument, emphasizing not only the physical and emotional toll on Brielle but the societal implications of letting such violence go unpunished. Robert Johnson, the ringleader, sat stone-faced throughout the trial, his arrogance unshaken even as the evidence mounted against him. Katori Glover avoided eye contact, his stoic demeanor masking whatever emotions might have been brewing beneath the surface. Joey Guerin, visibly nervous, seemed to shrink under the weight of the proceedings, his earlier bravado replaced by palpable fear. The defense attempted to shift blame and muddy the waters, suggesting that the events were consensual or exaggerated. But their arguments faltered against the overwhelming evidence. Witness testimonies, forensic findings, and Brielle's unrelenting narrative dismantled their claims piece by piece. As the trial neared its conclusion, the prosecution delivered a searing closing argument. They reminded the jury of the courage it took for Brielle to stand before them, reliving her trauma to ensure her attackers were held accountable. They emphasized the need for justice, not just for Brielle, but for every victim of violence who had been silenced or ignored. The jury deliberated for hours, their faces grim as they weighed the evidence. When they returned, the courtroom held its breath. Guilty. The verdict was unanimous. Robert Johnson, Katori Glover, and Joey Guerin were convicted on all counts, including attempted murder, sexual assault, and arson. The judge handed down life sentences, ensuring the men would never again harm another soul. As the sentences were read, Brielle allowed herself a moment of relief. Justice had been served, but she knew her journey was far from over. In the aftermath of the trial, Brielle Saunders became an advocate for survivors of violence. She used her platform to speak out against gender-based violence, raising awareness about the systemic failures that enable such atrocities. Through interviews, speaking engagements, and partnerships with advocacy organizations, Brielle transformed her pain into purpose. She founded a nonprofit dedicated to supporting survivors, providing resources, counseling, and a safe space for those who, like her, had endured the unimaginable. Brielle's story became a rallying cry, a reminder that even in the face of unspeakable darkness, resilience and courage could prevail. Her voice, once celebrated for its lyrical brilliance, now carried a message of hope and determination. Her attackers had tried to silence her, but Brielle Saunders refused to be erased. Instead, she emerged stronger, her story a beacon of light for countless others. Life had no value, as though she were a thing to be used, discarded, and forgotten. But she proved you wrong. She survived. And now, this court ensures that you will never have the chance to harm anyone again. The gallery erupted in quiet applause, many unable to contain their relief. Brielle sat silently, her head held high, tears streaming down her face, not of pain, but of triumph. Justice had been served. For Brielle Saunders, the courtroom victory was just one step in a long journey. The physical and emotional scars from that night were still raw. Recovery wasn't easy, it demanded strength, patience, and unrelenting determination. The physical toll was immense. Brielle endured multiple surgeries to repair the damage caused by the gunshot wounds and burns. Skin grafts and physical therapy became a daily part of her life. There were days when the pain felt unbearable, but she reminded herself of the strength that had kept her alive on that cold, desolate night. Emotionally, the battle was just as grueling. Nightmares haunted her, and the trauma lingered in unexpected moments. But Brielle refused to let fear define her. She began seeing a trauma therapist who specialized in helping survivors of violent crime. Slowly but surely, she began to reclaim her life. Though healing was difficult, Brielle discovered a new sense of purpose in her pain. She knew that her story could inspire others, victims and survivors who felt powerless in the face of trauma. With the support of friends, family, and advocates, Brielle launched the Phoenix Foundation, named after the mythical bird that rises from its ashes. The foundation became a sanctuary for survivors of violence, offering counseling, legal resources, and advocacy programs. Through public speaking events, Brielle shared her story, breaking the silence around gender-based violence and challenging societal norms that enable such atrocities. Her voice resonated far and wide. Media outlets picked up her story, turning her into a symbol of resilience and hope. Rap battles and hip-hop communities across the country rallied behind her, vowing to create safer spaces for women in a male-dominated industry. Brielle's story didn't just ignite change in her local community, it sparked a national conversation about violence against women, toxic masculinity, and the justice system's role in addressing these issues. Lawmakers took notice, and Brielle became a vocal advocate for legislative reform. Through tireless campaigning, she helped push for the passing of Brielle's Law, a bill that imposed stricter penalties for gender-based violence and ensured survivors received more comprehensive support services. Schools, colleges, and community centers began inviting Brielle to speak about her experiences, using her platform to educate young people about consent, respect, and the importance of standing against violence. Years after the attack, Brielle stood on the stage of a packed auditorium, addressing thousands of people at a survivors' conference. Her voice was steady, her presence commanding. "I'm not just a survivor," she told the crowd. "I'm a warrior. And so are you. They tried to silence me, to take away my voice, my dignity, my life. But I'm still here. And as long as I'm here, I'll keep fighting, not just for myself, but for every single one of us who's been told we're less than, that we don't matter." The audience erupted in applause, many wiping away tears. Brielle smiled, the light in her eyes undimmed by the darkness she had endured. She had risen from the ashes stronger than ever. Her attackers had tried to break her, but Brielle Saunders had become unbreakable. Ugliest depths of human cruelty but also illuminated the unyielding strength of the human spirit. In the weeks and months following the trial, Brielle Saunders became more than a survivor, she became a symbol of hope and resilience for people across the nation. Her recovery journey was arduous, but it was marked by incredible milestones that reflected her determination to reclaim her life. Brielle underwent multiple surgeries to repair the physical damage inflicted upon her. The burns required extensive skin grafts, and the gunshot wounds left her with lingering pain and limited mobility. Yet, with each therapy session, she regained strength. She refused to let the attack define her life. Instead, Brielle took up journaling as a therapeutic outlet, pouring her thoughts and experiences onto paper. Those journals would eventually become the foundation of her memoir, Unbreakable, Rising from the Ashes, a raw and powerful account of her journey from victim to victor. As her physical body healed, Brielle also focused on her mental health. Therapy became a cornerstone of her recovery, helping her confront the trauma and learn to live without fear. Her therapist often remarked on Brielle's unwavering resolve, calling her a force of nature, determined to turn her pain into purpose. Brielle's case was more than a courtroom battle, it was a wake-up call for the community and the nation. Advocacy groups used her story to highlight systemic failures in addressing violence against women, and her bravery inspired campaigns promoting awareness and prevention. Among these was the Saunders Initiative, a program launched in her honor to educate communities about the warning signs of violence and the importance of supporting survivors. The initiative partnered with schools, workplaces, and community organizations to provide training on bystander intervention and resources for those at risk. At the state level, Brielle worked closely with lawmakers to advocate for legislation aimed at protecting victims of violent crimes. Her tireless efforts contributed to the passage of Brielle's Law, which established stricter sentencing guidelines for repeat offenders and expanded funding for survivor support programs. Brielle didn't just rebuild her life, she became a beacon of empowerment for others. Through speaking engagements, she shared her story with audiences around the country. Her words resonated deeply, especially with young women who saw in her a reflection of their own struggles and triumphs. At one of her most memorable events, a university commencement ceremony, Brielle delivered a speech that moved the audience to tears. "You are stronger than the worst thing that has ever happened to you," she told the graduating class. "And when you find that strength, use it, not just to lift yourself up, but to lift others as well. That's how we change the world." Her foundation, the Phoenix Project, grew rapidly, offering resources for survivors of violence, including counseling, legal aid, and financial assistance. The foundation also funded community art programs, using creativity as a tool for healing and self-expression. As years passed, Brielle's influence continued to grow. Her memoir became a bestseller, her foundation expanded to multiple states, and her advocacy led to further legal reforms. But for Brielle, her greatest achievement wasn't the recognition or the accolades, it was the lives she touched. Every letter from a survivor who found hope through her story, every young woman who felt empowered to pursue her dreams, every person who stood up against violence because of her example, that was her true legacy. Brielle's journey is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of justice. Her story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, there is light to be found. It challenges us to reflect on our role in creating a world where no one has to endure what she did. As we close this chapter, we honor Brielle Saunders, not just for surviving, but for thriving. She turned her pain into purpose, her fear into courage, and her silence into a voice that will echo for generations. Stay with us as we continue to explore stories of resilience, justice, and the fight for a better world. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help amplify these voices and keep these conversations alive. Together, we can make a difference.